Hey guys, Dr. Morris, injury experts. We are heading into week 9. The injury report is crazy. There's 2 teams on bye, specifically the Pittsburgh Steelers and the San Francisco 49ers. So there are a lot of teams in play this week. There's about 20 new injuries and about 65 that are not new. Kind of ridiculous. I'm going to kind of break this up like I always do. Quarterback, running back, then wide receiver and tight end. There will be a timestamps section predominantly available on YouTube when that's uploaded. But my goal is to try to summarize what I think is going to happen. You will have a full report of who's in and who's out on Friday. And I try to sprinkle in some stuff between now and then. Everyone should be safe and happy Halloween. We'll be celebrating it here down here in Miami, but I need you to be safe and make sure your children and other children that you are helping to feed, obviously taking care of appropriately. So let's start. So Lamar Jackson popped up today. Coach said, hey, it's just a rest day. Ends up being a back and knee issue. Usually not overly concerned about this. He got a new weapon in this week, Deontay Johnson. He's played every game since he left 2022 season with that PCL injury to his knee. Not super concerned, but obviously it's still early. I don't have any red flags for him. I think he's projected as my number 1 guy of the week or pretty close. Drake Maye unfortunately suffered a concussion. Surprisingly already out there in stage 3 of the protocol, which is great news. Decent chance he actually might play this week, which is pretty surprising. About 75% of the quarterbacks over the past 4 to 5 years who suffered concussions have missed the following week, meaning they on average miss 1 game. But there's a chance he could actually clear this. If he's medically healthy, this is a ridiculous matchup for him, at least for them to potentially win on back-to-back games. Jordan Love did not practice today with his groin strain. He says he's feeling better. In my opinion, he needs to practice both of the next 2 days in order for him to play this week. And remember that they have a bye next week, so Green Bay's pretty conservative with their medical management, so I would not be surprised if they held him out. Whether or not he wants to do that is a separate discussion. These guys usually want to play. Romeo Doubs has actually been the wide receiver 1 in first read targets the past 2, 3, 4 weeks. We might not expect to see a whole lot of passing if Malik Willis is going to be the quarterback this week, but we'll see how it plays out. Jared Goff popped up with an ankle injury. It sounds like it's relatively minor. He did not practice today. I'm not overly worried, but he struggled last week, from a fantasy perspective, but the team was on fire, so it didn't really matter. Justin Fields obviously strained that hamstring, I think it was Saturday, and as a result did not play or was back up on Monday night. At this point, he's obviously, he is the backup. He's on a bye this week, so it doesn't really affect us, but it's something to note. Jayden Daniels, what a friggin' game from last week, despite being injured. Should only be healthier this week than last week. As far as Aaron Rodgers, he's banged up. He'll play, but, we're going to see how it plays out tomorrow night, but he is really banged up. It's just, unfortunately, the nature of position, and he just doesn't heal as well at that age, and we're already in week 9. He turns 40, I think, in a couple weeks, or 40, it might be 41. DTR is obviously going to be the backup still. I think Jameis is probably going to finish the season as the starter, and as he should be. He looks incredible. He'll probably get a starting job next year. I do believe Derek Carr is coming back this week from his oblique strain, which is great news for the offense, especially for Olave. Spencer Rattler, he gave it a shot. He's got some work to do. Maybe he's got some promise down the road, but he'll be back to the bench. Andy Dalton did return to practice today in full. I don't know which way they're going with this. Long story short, he lost his primary weapon. Thielen may or may not be back this week. Coker looks pretty good. Leggett looks pretty good. Obviously, Chuba looks pretty good. And they might get Jonathon Brooks, which we'll talk about in a minute, starting. So Will Levis may or may not start this week. He's still questionable with that grade 2 AC sprain, which is a pretty significant injury in that throwing shoulder, I should say. So either way, it's tough. Well, we won't have a really good idea to the end of the week and several of his weapons, the primary all three weapons, are injured, so we have to keep an eye on that too. Running backs, Josh Jacobs popped up on the injury report today, did not practice. He is said, I got tweaked about 4 or 5 times during the game. I'll be fine. I just took today off, which usually tells me it's probably a classic lateral ankle sprain, just sore. He'll tape it up pretty good. He's been really good over the past couple of weeks, so we'll have to keep an eye on him, but I'm not overly concerned about this one. Tony Pollard did pop up today with a foot injury that did not practice. Again, could be very similar where they're just being careful with him. Could also be a midfoot sprain, which is kind of this middle part of the foot, which if it's a significant injury, people will often call a Liz Frank. That's traditionally what a foot injury is in general, if you were to just guess. Obviously, if it's a fracture, if it's, a toe injury, if it's an ankle injury, they usually specify. Jordan Mason re-injured that shoulder. He's on a bye this week. Isaac Guerendo looked really good. He tweaked his leg a little bit. And then I think we're going to see Christian McCaffrey back next week. Everything's pointing to that. I think Guerendo is actually going to take over as the primary. Mason just doesn't look very good anymore, and he already re-injured his shoulder twice now. So, they're kind of, I wouldn't be surprised even if they held him out if he's still struggling with that injury. Now, Tyrone Tracy suffered a concussion on Monday night. By definition of the rule of the protocol, day 1, you can't do anything. Day 2, you are, doing a little bit more, but not doing a whole lot if you don't have any symptoms, like your symptoms improved. Day 3 is traditionally when you start doing sport-specific work. Monday was day 0. It's not day 1 because he suffered it Monday. Tuesday was day 1, and today he was on the practice field. Explain that to me, because traditionally you cannot enter the practice field until you're on day 3 of the protocol, like Dre Maye. So I don't know where we're going with this. If most people say, hey, he suffered a concussion on Monday, it's very, very, very difficult to to play on Sunday. Thursday, it's impossible. There's just not enough days. But if he's already in protocol 3, which I literally don't know how that's possible, he could potentially play this week. We'll have to see. He needs a modified practice tomorrow, and then he has to have a full practice on Friday. Traditionally, they don't practice on Saturday unless it's a Monday game. And as a result, they don't practice on Saturday. Usually they don't clear them, and they're usually out. So we'll have to see how this is going to play out. But he's looked incredible. Obviously, Singletary will get the majority of the work. Now, Dameon Pierce is out tomorrow night with a groin strain. So he's been back up anyway. But, Joe Mixon looks incredible. He's looked really good. Could continue to rock crazy high volume. Kendre Miller had been struggling with hamstring injuries. Coach called him out multiple times. Guess what he left last week with? Hamstring injury. So I'm assuming he's out. It's probably a re-injury from the earlier one. It could be a new one, but either way, this is sounding like a Christian Watson type situation, possibly where they need to evaluate what's going on. This is something that I would do, PRP and stem cells and a bunch of stuff into the tendon to heal this so that it goes away for good. Check the hips. There's a lot of moving parts to this. There could be several things that are contributing. Kamara should be fine with his hand. Montgomery's almost 100% with his knee. Bucky Irving looked awesome last week from toe. Surprisingly was not a turf toe. Jonathan Taylor looked really good. Rock and roll. Just hope he doesn't tweak anything new. Looks really good. Happy that he's finally healthy again. Travis Etienne probably returning this week. Jordan Mason popped up today. I forgot what it was. It's relatively mild, probably. But, I think Etienne could easily step back in and start to steal some thunder. Keaton Mitchell, full practice today. Maybe he gets back on the field this week. I don't know where they're at with him. Super dynamic, had a bad injury. But, he offers something that Justice Hill doesn't and that Derrick Henry doesn't. But I don't know how much they're going to pull Derrick Henry off the field. But, if they want to keep him fresh or if it's a blowout, would not be surprised if we saw some Keaton Mitchell. At this point, in my opinion, he's more of a handcuff than anything, though. Tyjae Spears He's the only one I got wrong last week. I thought he would play. He was trending in the right direction. They decided to hold him out. I was 65, I think, of 66 or somewhere around there for projections on Friday. And he should be back this week. Just was a little too risky last week. Ray Davis should be fine with his calf. Jonathon Brooks, let's talk about this very quickly. He should be back and make his debut this week. Why do I say that? Because if he doesn't debut this week and they don't activate him, he's done for the year. He's about to close his window. Coach said, and leave that as it is, if he practices in full multiple times, he'll be ready to roll. He's practiced multiple times in full. Today he practiced in full. I think he probably gets activated. Would not be surprised if Miles Sanders ends up on a new team by the end of the week or into early next week, whatever the deadline is. Jonathon Brooks is probably not someone I'm going to start this week on any team unless it's ridiculously deep. But the talent is there. I just don't know how much volume he's going to get. Aaron Jones looked great. The hamstring has not caused any problems since. Rachaad White the same. Brian Robinson hasn't really been super impressive lately, but Nick Chubb has. Nick Chubb looks really good. He's starting to pick up more volume. He's going to look a little bit more confident. The offense, clicking and throwing the ball a lot better obviously helps the running game as well. So hats off to him. Grind. I don't never expect him to be that elite top 5 back again. It's probably unrealistic post ACL and at his age, but happy that he was able to get back on the field after such a brutal injury, basically for the second time. All right, so there are a ton of wide receivers injured, but I want to knock out, unfortunately, the ones that are done for the year. We saw Stefon Diggs, unfortunately, tear his right ACL after he planted and tried to cut back left. Non-contact, almost always concerning for an ACL, and unfortunately, it fits the bill here. We don't know of any other additional injuries, but obviously done for the year. He's in a free agent year next year. He's 31, I want to say, so this is a bad combination. We've seen several wide receivers struggle post-ACL, especially in their first 6 to 8 games. The only one that really defied odds was back in 2017, 2018, Cooper Kupp. But Chris Godwin looked good, but he really had to turn it on late for him to be pretty good that year. Mike Williams has struggled this year. Kendrick Bourne has pretty much been irrelevant. Even TJ Hawkinson should be back this week. He hasn't obviously done anything. It's week 9. Tyler Higbee, we haven't heard from him. So ACLs in wide receivers and tight ends are just tough. They're tough injuries to come back from and be immediately effective. So, just unfortunate injury for him. I think Tank Dell almost has to step up. Nico Collins should be back next week, I believe. It will be his window for when he can return. And, maybe we see some, John Mechie. Maybe we see some Robert Woods, I think, is lurking somewhere. I think he's still on that team. He might be on a different team at this point. But either way, your primary guys, that's who we're going to target. Deebo Samuel did suffer a rib and an oblique injury. He's on a bye, so hopefully he's okay to come back next week and actually play. He had that pneumonia. He had that wrist injury, so he's kind of banged up. Amari Cooper came up today with his own wrist injury, likely mild, but something to monitor. He has been getting crazy volume. In my opinion, he's kind of disappointing. Yeah, he doesn't know the playbook yet, but they have a lot of mouths to feed. Kincaid, Shakir, James Cook they're throwing to. Curtis Samuel will eventually be back. He hasn't really done a whole lot, though. They just have a lot of mouths to feed. It's hard, Keon Coleman, it's hard to expect Cooper to get 10, 15 targets. It's not going to happen. They just don't throw the ball that much, especially to one guy this season. DJ Moore should be fine. He tweaked his hand last week. That's been a relatively disappointing offense. In my opinion, they've been pretty mediocre. Brian Thomas Jr., this is one that most people are going to be curious about. He ended up getting really lucky. He has a rib bruise. I tweeted about this the other day. Not a rib fracture or a rib cartilage injury based on reports. That tells me very good chance that he's going to be able to practice the rest of this week. He started practice with limited capacity today, which is a great sign, and I think he plays on Sunday. Now, remember, they lost Christian Kirk to a fractured collarbone for the rest of the year. So he's going to get more volume. It's going to be him. It's going to be Parker Washington, who's going to take over for Kirk, and that's what he did last year. And it's going to be Ingram. Those are going to be your main receivers. So Brian Thomas is already, I think, the wide receiver 5 or 7, depending on your scoring. So the kid's been incredible. I'm hoping that this is just a minor setback. Gabe Davis is banged up with a shoulder. He's been relatively irrelevant too. But I'm hoping that Brian Thomas plays, and if he plays, I'm starting him. He's too potent, and he's had a ton of 60-plus yard games. He's done a really good job. The Tennessee Titans are banged up. Go figure. Calvin Ridley needed DeAndre Hopkins to disappear before he decided to get 10 or 15 targets or whatever it was, which was insane. He had an incredible first quarter, of course, sitting on my bench. Calvin Ridley, new shoulder injury. Have to keep an eye on it, see what's going on. I'm assuming Christian Gonzalez will be on him if he is playing. Tyler Boyd, also with a shoulder injury, the other main wide receiver there now. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Tyler Lockett popped up today, with an oblique injury. And we'll have to play that out. DK may or may not be back. He did not return to practice this week. I know people think, he's going to be fine. MCL sprains are significant. I mean, they hurt. And a lot of the times it's hard because guys get tackled, on the outside, and this re-sprains, and he's probably got a bone bruise. He wants to play, but sometimes that knee's not ready to play. So, if Lockett's banged up, JSN has been disappointing this year, but he might be the guy. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Kenneth Walker has been great. Noah Fant we'll talk about in a little bit. Bub Means likely out with a high ankle sprain. Sterling Shepard out with a hamstring strain, or assumingly out. I haven't seen any reports, but I'm assuming he's out. And Mike Evans could potentially be back in Week 10, which would be ridiculous because he's got a grade 2 hammy, but it's technically possible, and if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be him. So he, another thing before I forget, completely off topic, but today and tomorrow will be probably the last days you'll be able to buy low on Breece Hall. After that, he has a ridiculous end-of-season schedule. He's going to be probably a league winner. He was my RB1 projection for the whole season. I'm still sticking with that. I honestly think that he's a beast, and that So if you have a chance to see this and buy low on him, if you still can, I think it's going to pay dividends. He might smash tomorrow night, and after that, it's over. Wandale should be fine with his ankle. Nabers better with his groin. T. Higgins dealing with that quad injury. Did not practice today. Quad strains, if this is what this is, do not heal in a week. They don't. They're frustrating. Every time you try to run, you fire that quad. And what happens to a strain when you run through it? You make it worse. So, and then when you strain it, it bleeds, and it bleeds into the cavity, and it hurts. You can't flex your quad. It's just a frustrating injury. I've seen guys miss a month with these. These are frustrating injuries. Let's see how he does tomorrow and the next day, but usually this is not looking good, especially since he did it last Friday, which basically means he hasn't even had a week to heal yet. Tyreek Hill just been pretty much MIA. He had that foot injury last week, didn't do a whole lot in the game. Not quite up to Tyreek standards. Zay Flowers had an incredible game. It looked like that he never even suffered that ankle injury. He's got a little bit more target competition now with Deontay Johnson, but we'll have to see how that plays out. He got lucky. Great. I'm happy for him. He left the game for a couple snaps and just continued to play, so hats off to him. Jaylen Waddle has been dealing with a quad, probably a bruise, but he's been disappointing this year. Josh Downs, welcome. We got Joe Flacco starting for reportedly the rest of the season, which I was advocating for the other day. And it's the right call. I know Anthony Richardson needs to figure it out, but if you're trying to make playoffs, you can't test your quarterback out and try to make the playoffs because unfortunately one usually doesn't correlate with the other. So I think Flacco's the answer now until they can tailor an offense to Richardson. And that's fantastic news for Downs. He's been absolutely on fire with Joe Flacco. Crazy volume, crazy first target percentage. He's been healthy despite dealing with groin injuries and toe injuries. If he's active, you start him. He's been incredible. And then Pittman, not quite as confident in him, but it's still pretty confident. He's been banged up a little bit, but not as bad. Juju probably doesn't play this week. We'll have to see how that plays out. DeMario Douglas just has been disappointing, despite what we thought could have been. Jalen Polk should still be in the concussion protocol. I have to see an update on him. Curtis Samuel could potentially play this week with a pec injury, but he's not really relevant. Lazard is likely going to be out tomorrow with a chest, probably rib fracture, if I were to guess, based on how they're describing this. Could be rib cartilage, but usually these guys are able to try to push through that, and he hasn't done anything. So that tells me it's pretty significant. Cooper Kupp should be healthier this week, hopefully. He looks a little bit more spry because he didn't look the best last week. Puka looked incredible, and he should only get better. Olave should be good to go with his concussion and his, everything. Jaden Reed has been kind of slacking lately. We'll have to see how that plays out. Deontay Johnson should be healthier. I'm assuming he's going to play, even though you don't know a whole lot of the playbook. Adam Thielen could come back from his hamstring injury, and we'll have to see how that plays out. He's just risky, Quentin Johnson has been dealing with an ankle. My guess is a high ankle because I haven't heard a confirmation, but he's been out for several weeks, which correlates with that. Ladd McConkey has been downright bananas. He looks incredible. He's still dealing with a little bit of hip. It's probably a hip flexor, but he is a very elite player. They're throwing the ball. They look really good the past couple of weeks, especially throwing the ball. This kid has top 10 potential next year, assuming several things are in factor. But if you have a chance to get him for the rest of the season, I would go get him. He is really good. Juwan Jennings, hopefully back next week. He could fill in for Ayuk, and he's already had some monster games this year. The rest of the wide receivers are pretty much good to go. Let's finish up strong with tight ends. Noah Fant popped up today with a groin injury. Too soon to really tell, but these are a little bit annoying injuries. George Kittle on a bye should be better. With his foot, he's been downright bananas. Incredible season so far for him. Will Dissly had that shoulder, should be fine for this week. Jatavian Sanders dealing with that groin and wrist, he'll be okay, but they're not really someone I'm going to target. Taysom suffered a new injury this week. He's had a ton of foot injuries throughout his career. Multiple Liz Frank fractures, crazy injury. He's got a new foot injury, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Normally, I'm not worried about these, but in someone in his caliber that has that much of an injury history, you have to keep an eye on it. Dallas Goedert still not back on the field. This might have been closer to a grade 2 than a grade 1. He's just struggling to get back. And then Hayden Hurst with that groin. Hawkinson with his knee. Yes, I will start him this week. He may be sluggish for a couple weeks. He did suffer a pretty significant ACL, I believe it was MCL, and he had a surgery really late. It was late January. That's why he didn't come back until now. But the kid's a freak, and he's a great athlete, and I think he's going to slide right in and catch a lot of passes. So rock and roll, and Tucker Kraft's been really good, not getting a lot of volume, but catching a touchdown almost every week. And groin injury, so I've been playing him. It's like an automatic 8 to 12 points every week, despite low volume. That's what I got for you. I'll fill you in as much as I can throughout the week. The wrap-up on Sunday, maybe Sunday night, maybe Monday. We'll see how it is. But nonetheless, best of luck. As I said, stay safe, stay healthy. Good luck. We're getting close to win, critical games where we have one or two more before the end before we start to get into playoffs. So make the moves now. Good luck, and we will see you next Wednesday. Take care.